Infernal greetings, infernal blessings. Welcome to another discussion on the adversarial path, dark hand path, left hand path, the path. As a vampire, black adept, practitioner, you are the master of pleasure and pain. However, what happens is we sometimes forget that being a master of pleasure and pain also comes with a little more understanding. And what does that mean? Not becoming a slave to your pleasure and pain. See, a vampire, a black adept understands that pain is how we grow. Pain is what pushes us to transform ourselves. Pain is what allows us to test our limits and beyond. But with pain and pleasure, there is another caveat that we have to understand as vampires, black adepts, or practitioners on this path. And that is your willpower must be strong to become a master of pleasure and pain. See, pleasure, humans seek pleasure and seek to avoid pain. So they're always geared towards circumventing pain and running towards pleasure. That is the mind of a weak individual, a group mindset of weak people. We understand that pain causes a transformation mentally, physically, and spiritually, but pain can only be overcome through the sheer willpower to overcome that pain, because it is easy to get lost in pain and pleasure. See, when people experience pain, they tend to want to numb the pain, so therefore they seek opioids. Sorry, they seek, lack of a better term, painkillers. They seek drugs to numb the pain. They seek drugs to numb the pain of an emotional scar, emotional trauma. And therefore, they become very weak. A true vampire does not use or need drugs. There is vampires that will use drugs, recreational drugs for their choice. But from my understanding and experience as a vampire, we tend to avoid drugs because they become a weapon of mass destruction when your willpower is weak, which the masses have very low willpower, and therefore can lead to addictions. Now you created another problem from one problem. But at the same time, pleasure can be the same addictive trait. We seek to be pleased. So therefore, we run to get the latest luxury brand, the luxury shoes, because it appeases us having nothing or coming from nothing. And now that we have a little money, the brand itself, although it may be cheaply made, although it may not look great, just because it has a brand name on there, it brings us temporary pleasure. That is a lack of willpower, because by the time you look up and notice, damn, I've spent $5,000-6,000 I should have not on these luxury brands or more, then you created another predicament. Now pain comes with that, because you may not have enough money to cover this bill or enough money to cover an emergency situation or so on and so forth. Vampires don't rely on allowing themselves to become slaves to pleasure and pain. sexual pleasure is one of the biggest addictions that can be out there. Although not everybody's addicted to sex, some are damn near addicted to it. So what happens is you then seek pleasure all the time. You seek pleasure and your willpower lessens. Why does it lessen? Why does it become weaker? Is because the seeking of pleasure is now leading you to be not as selective as you should be. You can have multiple partners. That is your choice. That is your choice. No one is looking down or up at it. However, the partners you choose, you should be selective about, because the more partners you take on, the more transmission is exchanged between the two, the less the thoughts become of you, the less you have of your own thoughts, and the more their thoughts creep in within you. There is more involved in sex than just pleasure. There is an exchange of energy. There's an exchange of DNA. There's a lot going on. And when that happens, the less selective you are in your partners, the more you are bombarded by their mindset. Because of your lack of willpower, they can overpower you with their sexual energy and open you up and make you weak and susceptible to emotional swings, make you weak and susceptible to being dominated and conquered by their sexual prowess. So a vampire understands these things. They understand that discomfort in the gym, let's say if you're strength training, discomfort in the gym is necessary to build muscle. But they also understand that it is not just about building muscle. They understand that in building that muscle, I'm increasing my willpower and my strength to go beyond that exhaustion point. They understand that this is more than just working out. They understand that this is about pushing my willpower to greater heights. It has been said that you are the experiencer and not the experience. And this leads to another problem. Many people get caught up in their experience and forget that they are the experiencer and forget the purpose of the experience in the first place. Anything you experience should be for your growth. The problem with experience, especially on this path, left-hand path, is if your experience is subjective, that subjective experience and how you interpret it can also be based upon your mental health. If your mental health is borderline psychotic, then you are going to interpret it differently than other people will, and you will seek to have other people co-sign or validate your experience, which is next to impossible unless I was there with you. So a lot of times on this path, we'll hear people say, I experienced it. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I know what I did. I know what happened. And I don't need anyone else to tell me anything. Fine. But that is borderline psychotic. And I'll tell you why. Mystics tend to be psychotic in themselves, is because they base a world without rational thought. They base a world or create a world that has no substance. And what do I mean by that is, to a mystic, they'll look at the wall and say the wall is an illusion. And that really what keeps you stuck looking at that wall is having the mindset that the wall exists in the first place. There's a problem with that. To a vampire, we understand the physical world, and we understand mastering the physical world is necessary And that's the first step you should master before you try to become super spiritual, because you lose sight of reality. In this case, you will lose sight in reality. So a mystic will look at the wall and see and tell you the wall doesn't exist, that you go outside, that tree doesn't exist, and that all these things are an imagination of our mind. They're delusions. But in reality, the mystic is delusional, because when you get down to it, true knowledge is not based on experience. True knowledge is based upon factual information that could be validated by the masses of people. So if you tell me the wall's not there, I'll tell you as a mystic, go touch that wall and tell me if that wall really is there. Boom. They have to admit that wall's there, but they will continue in their psychotic delusional episode by telling you, see, brother, you just don't understand. So you're still encased within person, place, or thing. You're still encased within the mindset of a mortal. So therefore, you can't understand that even though it appears that I'm touching this wall, my hand is actually on the other side. Stop it. Now we're getting to a situation where that psychotic episode is becoming something that could be dangerous to you and other people, when they don't want to admit that that wall is there. See, when you're in the physical, you're still in the physical. I don't care how spiritual you are and how spiritual you want to spook out and transform and leave and never come back and all this, because the bottom line, as long as you're here, you're governed by these forces. You're governed by these, energy. And yes, there is ways to break those gravitational laws and things of that nature. But you first have to admit to yourself that they're even there, because the only way you could break a law is by understanding the law and understanding that law inside and out, and understanding every aspect of that law to even translate past that law. So when Set seeks to separate from this paradigm, Set understood that the only way I can break free from this paradigm is to not even be born into the same paradigm as my parents, my grandparents, great-grandparents, so on and so forth. I have to be born a different way, a unique way that is not akin to all humans. Therefore, when I break free from that and I'm born a different way, I am breaking free from the paradigm that encases the minds of most humanity. A psychotic individual, it happens quite often in the occult world and in spirituality and things of that nature. They'll tell you your human experience doesn't mean anything. A vampire will tell you it does. Because if it's not for this human experience, you have less willpower, and your delusions will make you weaker when it comes to willpower. So what a vampire does is they test the limits of their willpower by experiencing physical situations. However, in that experience, never become a slave to it, because that's often what happens to individuals. You meet this individual, their energy is sky high. You feel like you have to have it. True. You may want to, and you will eventually do that, but don't get lost in it where you lose your willpower in the process. And then it's not just about that person. Now the excuse is made, I need to conquer all these people. I need to conquer every individual, and each individual that has this type of energy. And that is where the delusions start to come in. You're starting to lose your grasp on reality. Most humans are stopped by the avoidance of pain, the unconscious avoidance of pain. And therefore, they never achieve their goals, because every goal you set will come with obstacles, and every obstacle may have pain associated with it. So what a vampire does is they conquer their goals because they understand that with every opportunity to conquer my goal, There may be adversity, but the adversity is what allows me to hone and master and nourish my willpower. It allows me to elevate past the limitations that we put on ourselves. Now, don't get it wrong. I'm not telling you that you can't break certain things, certain patterns of behavior, but you still are within a certain environment that you have to master first. Listen, so many people have seeped into this left-hand path, adversarial path, so on and so forth, from the right-hand path, the gray areas of the occult world, and they're poisoning the substance of what the left-hand path is really all about. They're poisoning it because they're still coming with belief. They're coming with the belief that if I prayed over here, I can pray over here. And that is what causes delusions on this path. What causes failure on this path is because you are still not understanding the process. Leave the old paradigm alone and start to master this paradigm. As a master of pleasure, I don't avoid pleasure. I seek pleasure. But in seeking that pleasure, I also remind myself that my willpower must maintain and increase its strength if I'm going to fully enjoy this pleasure, 100% wholeheartedly be knee deep in the pleasure. I understand that unless my willpower is doubly strong, that I may become a slave to that pleasure. This happens a lot. I know individuals on this path who want to be sexually free. They feel they're sexually free. And the reason they do this is because they feel that they were suppressed, they were controlled, they were never really taught about sex. And so what happens is we then go out of our way. We go out of our way to become sexual beings, but yet do not understand what a sexual being really is. A sexual being is not an individual who just seeks pleasure from sex. A sexual being is an individual who understands the science of sex, the art of sex, the spirituality of sex, so on and so forth, and they choose a sexual experience and pleasure to master their will through the process. This is what's unusual to some people, that having to do these steps in them is difficult because they don't understand that it's not just about getting an orgasm or having an orgasm or getting your socks knocked off or whatever. It's not about that. What it is about is understanding there's an exchange of sexual energy. It brings pleasure, but I have to learn how to minimize the pain that comes through sexual pleasure as well. And then I have to take that and stay in control with my willpower, experience the pleasure and the pain of it, and push beyond what my willpower once was, and take it to a level of what it will be. So a lot of times I will tell you, I've noticed individuals lose themselves in the process. They don't understand themselves in the process. That becomes a problem, a serious problem, because now you're lost in the sauce. Now you have responsibilities that may have come from the act of pleasure. And now you want to avoid it because it brings pain with it. This is why you should be responsible for your actions, calculate your actions and what the experience could be, all circumstances involved in that experience, and take responsibility before you even partake in it. An experiencer looks at the whole experience inside and out and looks at the variables of that experience, consequences, so on and so forth, before they decide to partake fully in the experience. An individual that's just governed by pleasure and pain, or the avoidance of pain, will not even think about all of that. They'll just jump head first because the experience of that pleasure is involved and is available and it's right in front of them. So screw all the reasoning, screw everything else. I'm just going into it. That happens. We have to learn as vampires, as black adepts, that mastering this is essential. That is what leads to a growth beyond what you can qualify, quantify, and so on and so forth. So what is the ultimate purpose for a vampire, black adept, a practitioner on this path? It is forging a true ego, the creation of the immortal self, not the mortal self. As with your journey to understand your will, discovering the self and creating the self is an ultimate journey as well. That is discovering the dragon within. This is why vampires quite often use the word dragon in their societies, in their temples, in their orders, things of that nature, because the dragon is associated with the self. It is the true self and the true ego that's coming forth that you are connecting with, empowering yourself through to become the great individual that you are destined to be. So we need to understand this process. I'm going to be doing a series of videos from here on out. And some of them I will have my brother Demetrius with them. It's called Left Hand Paths, Thoughts and Musings. Thoughts and musings on the left hand path. Okay. We're going to share some thoughts from our journey, and we're going to discuss it. We're going to reflect on it, and we're going to give some further insight on it, that it may, in the process, assist you all in your journey. That is what ultimately why we do these classes. The love and passion that we have for this path, the love and passion that we spew out to others, is a reflection of our journey as the experiencer going through an experience, and the vampiric will, the will of the black adept. We do this because we love what this information, what this practice has done for us. It has done much more for us than we can possibly put into words, but we will attempt to do that. The vampire class, the order is going lovely. However, we're about to restructure that. what we're speaking about here today, we're going to create a vampiric class within the Temple of the Black Serpent Patreon that will give you a thorough understanding of vampirism based upon the lifestyle of a vampire. The lifestyle of a vampire comes with a different consciousness. The way we view life, the way we live life is different than even others on the left-hand path. So for those who really want a thorough understanding before they get into the Order of the Black Claw, which most likely I'm going full tilt and going back to the original name, and if it violates others, so what? But it is going to show you a clearer picture of what it means to be a vampire, to live in a day side. It comes with a lifestyle. It comes with the way you carry yourself, the way you think, the way you see, the way you interpret, the way you interact. That is the missing piece that a lot of vampiric books don't really discuss. A lot of areas are not really gone into as much. And I understand why, because they're trying to draw you into vampires and to understand more. So we're restructuring and bringing a new class that's going to teach you about the vampire itself, living, walking, eating, breathing every day, and how to shift your mindset from a mortal mindset to an immortal mindset, from day side to night side. How to tap into the undead gods, the vampiric masters who've translated into the afterlife or the current of death, and how they bless you in gnosis, and how you can interact and be a part of that current and stream to receive that gnosis, self-gnosis. This not a gnosis is not for everybody. This is a personal journey. So therefore, we don't co-sign you getting a subjective or going through a subjective experience, passing it off as if it's objective for all. There is a borderline, there's a border there that leads to delusions that we try not to cross. We're going knee deep into that. If you choose, you know, the link is there for the Temple of the Black Serpent on Patreon. It is going to be a very beautiful class. The Tunnel of Set class, we're getting towards the, as crazy as this may be, we're getting towards the tail end or the middle towards the tail end of the Tunnel of Set class, but we're transitioning that class to then go through the 10 cliff-off or cliff-off, one cliff at a time, with Dath being an extra that is tying the Tree of Life and Tree of Death together. But we're going to go through that. So you're going to have a thorough understanding of the Tunnels of Set, then the cliff-off itself. So that is going into effect. A lot of these classes, Demetrius is doing a lot of the teaching because I'm burnt out. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm burnt out of years and years of doing these classes, creating rituals. My brother is assisting me and helping me, and he's doing a lot of these classes because I need a break sometimes, okay? But essentially, understand this. The experiencer is not the experienced, okay? And I'm going to read this. This is from my notes taken from various vampiric sources. It is here that the twisted distortions of mysticism raise their empty heads to speak of God as this self which cannot be known. There are a few limited examples of worth which come from the fuzzy thinkers of mysticism here. One example is the old Zen saying, if you meet the Buddha, which is the self, on the road, kill him. This is merely another way of repeating the de-identification process foundation that the experiencer is not the experience. Other mystical pinheads would have us then abandon all conscious thought to seek this self, which by definition cannot be found. Experience. No experiencer, no experience. Another thought from Descartes, the famous philosopher. He states, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Descartes was wrong. Thinking can be carried out by the most mindless of all automatons, the electric computer, so on and so forth. No, the correct statement is I experience, therefore I am. You are the experiencer. You are the experiencer, but don't become a slave to your experience. Therefore, the truth is that we as vampires refer to the self as a sleeping dragon that must be awakened through a long, arduous journey and process, but it should be something you enjoy to do and can do and will do. I leave you with these thoughts and musings on the left-hand path. I look forward to having more of these discussions. This Thursday, myself and Brother Demetrius will be having more thoughts and musings on the left-hand path. It will be a live class. I hope to see you all there. All right. Talk to you all at a later date. Bye-bye.